This episode of Recording Studio Rockstars is brought to you by Sound Porter Mastering, OWC, Atom Audio, API Audio, JZ Microphones, Spectra 1964, and iZotope. In fact, you're hearing my voice right now through the JZ Pop filter on the JZ BB29 microphone, through the Spectra 1964 STX600 mic pre-complementer, and iZotope RX and Ozone, all recorded safely onto an OWC Mercury Extreme Pro 6G SSD. So get ready to rock.
RCA had these big voice of the theaters out in the room. I had a room mic out there, and when no one was around, or when they were eating dinner, or when people were bullshitting, I don't know, doing things, after hours or before I got there, I blasted the drums back into the room and re-recorded that and used the sound of RCA 30 feet away from those voice of the theaters and put that back in.
Welcome to Recording Studio Rockstars. I'm Lid Shaw, and this is the podcast created to help you become a rock star of the recording studio. Whether you're in the studio or working remotely, the Envoy Pro FX from OWC lets you record from anywhere with confidence, pushing USB technology bandwidth to the max of 2,800 megabytes per second over Thunderbolt. Transfer tracks in seconds and take your sessions with you anywhere you go. Built for the road, the OWC Envoy Pro FX is waterproof, dustproof, and crushproof. Find the new Envoy Pro FX and all your storage needs at macsales.com/rockstars. JZ Mics brings you the ultimate futuristic pop filter for your studio, built from solid metal parts that won't break and a flexible gooseneck for easy placement. The JZ pop filter uses a unique waveguide design that prevents plosives from getting through to the mic while allowing important high frequencies for clarity. Plus, it looks super cool, and you're hearing my voice on it right now. Use the limited time coupon ROCKSTARS to get 20% off this amazing pop filter from jzmic.com.
When I master a song, I'm immersed and committed to a sonic fidelity from start to beyond finished. Hi, I'm Brian Murphy of Sound Porter Mastering. My goal in every master is to help you prepare so that you're not compromising your timeline, budget, or your mix. My iterative process helps build a relationship with you so that you don't have to ever second guess your mix. Let's pull back the curtains on mastering, because there's no secrets here. Send me your mix and I'll give you free feedback or a free master demo. Just hit me up at soundporter.com.
Hey Rockstars, it's your host Lid Shaw, and welcome back to Recording Studio Rockstars, bringing you into the studio to learn from recording professionals so that you can make your best record ever and be a rock star of the studio yourself. My guest today is Vance Powell, a 6-time Grammy award-winning producer, engineer, and mixer whose impressive list of credits include Chris Stapleton, Elle King, The Raconteurs, The Dead Weather, The White Stripes, Arctic Monkeys, Wolf Mother, Seasick Steve, Black Prairie, Tinariwen, Jeff The Brotherhood, and Chris Stapleton, to name just a few. And Vance is, of course, a repeat guest on the podcast. I think at this point, Vance, we're just trying to have you on every single year. I think that was our plan last time we spoke.
Cool.
Right?
I love that. Yeah.
Yeah. So
I mean, last time was like the longest Rockstar podcast in history, I think.
Hell yeah.
But I don't know. Maybe now it's been long. Someone's talked longer, but
no, it was pretty good.
And this was better, and we did that at your place, which was great.
That was fun, man. Hopefully we'll do that again. I remember you waited patiently for me to return from dropping off my kid at school to get back to the studio in time, so thanks for that.
I didn't have anything else to do that afternoon, so it was all good.
Right on. Well, Rockstars, if you want to hear Vance's previous episodes, episode 2 and 171, you can check those out as well.
Number two.
I think number 1 was just, I don't even remember what it was, just me introducing the podcast, something like that.
Oh, cool. Awesome.
But we've got a bunch of questions for you from the Rockstars in our Facebook group. We posted it.
I saw that.
And that was great. It was very generous of you to jump in and start responding to some of that.
Well,
And
I just was responding to the ones that were easy, like how do you eat soup?
yeah, exactly.
You know,
What was your answer to eating
carefully,
soup? Carefully.
carefully. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, do you ever like, is that a good way to sort of get a little highlight in your beard?
No, red wine is the best way to do that. Red wine is I always know that I've had some red wine because like I'm old now, and so my beard is kind of gray, and then all along the edges it's kind of dark, and I'm like, oh, I had some red wine. So
There you go. Mine's all trimmed up now. I gave in to the pressure.
Right, exactly.
I don't have the cool long beard anymore, but it's cool. I did it for 5 years. That's a good long stretch.
So did you go completely clean?
No, I'm not completely shaven, but I'm down to like a number 2 on the buzzer.
Oh, yeah. I was a number 2 on the buzzer in about 91. Actually, a friend of mine, an old friend of mine from ages ago that has long since been out of my realm, sent me a Facebook message the other day with some video snippets of a session I did in 91, 92, something like that. And it's funny because I had the goatee, but I also had really long hair with like a shitty bald spot. So it was like, yeah, it was. And it was all pretty much like really dark, like really brown. I was like, wow,
nice.
I have not looked like that in a long time. Just had a goatee, trimmed up short, and then like really long hair.
I can only picture you one way, dude, which is the way that we know you now.
Yeah, I show pictures of me to people from back then, and they're like, that is not you. And I'm like, yes, it is. That's yeah. Right. So kind of one of those weird deals. I had a goatee. This is totally not music shit, but it is. And then one day I just kind of told Diana, I was like, I'm just going to let it grow. I'm going to see what happens.
Became a goatee.
And basically, yeah, exactly, a goatee. And what happened was for about 4 months, she was like, that looks terrible. It's horrible. And then one day I remember she just goes, you might have something here. Just let it go. So really, to be honest with you, I got to give her credit for it. So.
She didn't use the word eureka?
No, I don't remember eureka happening. But yeah.
Well, right on. Well, so Rockstars, of course, as Vance pointed out, we're not really here to talk about beards and hairstyles, but we will try and focus more on mixing tips for your home studio today. So please welcome back Vance Powell to Recording Studio Rockstars. Vance, are you ready to rock yet again, my brother?
Absolutely.
Dude, it's awesome to have you back. Thank you for doing this. I think it was probably about January last year that you and I did an interview. What a crazy year.
Yeah.
We can reference it or not. I don't really care at this point.
What's really crazy is that obviously you were in the middle of trying to get the studio thing overturned in Nashville.
Yeah.
And this is an outsider looking in. I mean, I went to a couple of those and was there for you, and there for our people. Yeah.
Thank you.
But what's interesting is, and I could be wrong, and you can tell me I'm wrong, but I actually sort of feel like COVID sealed the deal.
Yeah, no, absolutely it did. I mean, it was an obstacle, and I just looked at it and I was like, I'm going to just turn this from an obstacle into, the reason why we closed this deal. And so I just that's, helped spin the message to the Metro Council saying, if we're being told to work from home, then you got to make it legal for us to work from our home studios.
Yeah,
otherwise it doesn't make sense anyway. Other way,
right? Yeah. Well, I was happy that it went through, and I know it's not carte blanche, but it's better than what it was, and it gets a lot of people's neighbors off their back.
Yeah, I think it made a lot of people, a lot of musicians and producers and engineers finally be able to rest easy at night.
It's an interesting it's an interesting thing because while I don't have what I would call a commercial studio, you can't walk in the door and try to book time. Like there isn't another engineer working here. There's nobody else working here but me.
Right.
But in a way, having studios and houses and being able to operate as commercial business, in a way, I totally sort of understand how, the folks like Blackbird and, Tracking Room, which, whatever that means. And all those could back in the past be angry about it. But nowadays it's just like, whatever, man, wherever you can work. I mean, people are still going to want to go to like big rooms and cut drums because obviously reading the Rockstar stuff today, cutting drums in houses, in small rooms is never, I want to say never. It's hard to make it really work.
Yeah. Well, I mean, hopefully we can get some good advice from you on how we can do the best with it, with what we got. But I mean, Rockstars, all you got to do is just go listen to the Spotify playlist that we put in the show notes of Vance's work. And it's a no-brainer, the reasons why you go into a big professional commercial studio and the difference between some of the things that we'll do in our home studios and do in big commercial studios. And we never got there wasn't any pushback from Blackbird or any of the big studios in town.
Not now.
Yeah, it felt all very symbiotic, like we're all just working together.
But in 98, 99, 2000, there was definitely pushback.
Right.
There was definitely pushback. When suddenly someone could buy a Pro Tools HD, not an HD, but a Pro Tools mix card, remember those? D24 card.
Mm-hmm.
And you could hook up 388s and have a 24 track and you could have it in your house. Granted, you spent a lot of money, no more than you spend nowadays, but you spent a lot of money, but you could have a whole studio in your house. There was definitely, there was a thing here in town called Spars or something, I don't know, or Napers or something like that. And it was National Area Recording. It was some sort of like, it was a bunch of studios trying to get together and like be some sort of, I don't know, group. And all those folks, the people who ran Emerald and Tracking Room and all these commercial facilities, all they could talk about is how people in home studios were taking their clients and taking their business. And in a way, I completely understand that. And I understand why, I mean, my console that I have now, I paid $40,000 for or something like that.
Yeah.
But new, it was $309,000.
Yeah.
And Emerald had 5 of these.
Mm-hmm.
So they didn't just buy a Pro Tools system, put it in their bedroom, and start making records. That wasn't how you made records. You had to have all this infrastructure and you had to have all this stuff. And then suddenly, it started going away.
Yeah.
And so people had a lot of money invested, and I understand. I mean, I have a lot of money invested. I see people mixing in Logic and mixing in Pro Tools and Luna and happily doing it. And I think to myself, I could mix it and, they could come over here. But then, I realized that there's not money there or whatever,
Yeah.
They want to do it themselves, whatever. It doesn't matter.
Well, so here we are 30 years from that 91 reference and home studios abound and, you go buy the next Mac Mini and you can run hundreds of tracks in a Logic session and you can hook up what are you recording your voice right now? I think you're a fan of Universal Audio.
I'm a big Universal Audio. Yeah, I have this is a Austrian Audio OC 18, I think is what the microphone is. It's like their new version of a 414. And then that's hooked into an Apollo X4.
Nice.
That's the 4-channel sort of satellite, it's got the volume control. It's got 4 mic pre's. It's 4 in, 4 out. It's very nice. It's a very, very nice little box. And I have an X4 and I have just a regular one. And then I have an Arrow, which is the bus powered one.
Mm-hmm.
But the Arrow, I actually have loaned out right now to Heidi Neufeld. And, is an artist. She used to be in Trick Pony, and she's been doing these live streams, and they've actually been using my little arrow to do the live stream, which is kind of hilarious. I loaned it to them, and they, Matt, her partner Matt was like, "Hey, can we use this?" I was like, "Yeah, sure, go ahead. It's COVID now, and I don't want to see you, so yeah, just hang on to it."
You're like, you can't give it back now. It's
okay. It was poisoned. Because it was a box that was in my backpack in case I needed it for something.
Yeah,
you know what I mean. So,
well, your voice sounds great on this.
Oh, well, thanks. Yeah, well, it's a very nice microphone and nice preamp. So cool.
Yeah, dig it. You may already know that iZotope creates the very best smart plugins for mixing and mastering. But did you know that now you can get them all through iZotope's new affordable subscription bundles? Get Music Production Suite Pro for only $24.99 per month, or Producers Club for only $19.99 per month. Start your 7-day free trial subscription now, or go to iZotope.com/rockstars and use the code ROCK10 to get 10% off any individual plugin purchase. Coupon not valid for subscriptions or Spire Studio. The Spectra 1964 BBDI Passive Direct Box is perfect for recording deep bass that will make your mixes sound huge. Plug that into a C610 complementer, and as founder Bill Cheney points out, it'll move your pant leg. But what if you want to record direct keyboards? Spectra 1964 now offers the Stereo BBDI 2 with custom wound high-Z transformers for big headroom, virtually flat response, and a 15 dB input pad at Spectra1964.com. You know what? Let's jump right in with a question. So, among other things, I've got questions from the rock stars that were sent over in our Facebook group. Two things. One is, if you're listening and you're not sure what we were talking about with the home studio thing, if you want the backstory to that, just go to savehomestudios.com. And I've got a website there that's dedicated to telling the story of what we just did, winning the home studio battle here in Nashville. And if you're interested in joining our Facebook group, go to let's see, what is it? It's just, it's our Recording Studio Rockstars Facebook group. I guess just search for it there, or we'll include a link. But we've got some great questions. This one came in from Phil Williams, and it's relevant to what you just said,
What's up,
Vance. Phil said, if Vance were starting out all over again, would he learn Pro Tools, Luna, Logic, or some other DAW?
It's a good question. I think that starting over, I think what I would say is, what's my end goal? So if my end goal is to be a engineer / producer, work for myself, and work out of my house or out of a studio I built myself, then the world is your oyster. I'm a huge UA fan. In some ways, I've been working with UA for a long time with Luna. 5 years ago, they came here. We did a lot of questions answered, and talked a lot. Lev Perry, who helped develop it, or really, he was the lead developer of it. Him and I, we spoke over the years. I'm a big proponent of it. It's a very nice piece of software. It's not quite where I need it to work in it all the time yet, partially because I get Pro Tools sessions. That's kind of the deal,
right?
Because of what I do. But if I was starting out, an Apollo, like an 8P, or maybe 2 8Ps, which is the 8-channel with the 8 mic pre's, that's 16 mic pre's, 16 inputs. I mean, that and Luna is a lot of freaking power, man. And with the being able to put plugins as mic pre's, as emulators, and not because the mic pre's sound great as they are, it's a really powerful tool. So I would spend my money on really good on those, on a couple of 8Ps, and then just get Luna as part of it's free, which is really cheap.
Yeah.
And then spend my money on plugins and things, and just work in that world. If the world was going to be my oyster, And what I mean by
right.
that is I'm not going to be going to other studios. I'm not going to be working with other engineers. I'm not going to be taking outside projects to mix and things like that. If you want to do that, you absolutely positively have to be using Pro Tools.
Yeah.
There's a lot of good things about Nuendo. There's a lot of great things about Cubase. There's a lot of great things about Logic. There's a lot of great things about all of those. There's a lot of bad things about Pro Tools. There's great things about Ableton Live. There's a lot of things that are bad about Pro Tools. The problem is that Pro Tools is the only real software that has DSP on the front end, ultra low latency, and is used in every major studio by pretty much everybody in the world.
Yeah. Are you running an HDX system?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. HDX, 2 Burl motherships. I have a 24N. It's really not 24N, actually. It's 28N, 30, 40, 52 out. I have to think about that a little bit. Rig. That's basically my rig. I have a second Burl mothership that has the BAD 4Ms, which are the mastering units where you can turn the transformers in and out by pairs. That has really changed a lot of stuff for me, big time. So I just got that this year, actually. First of the year.
So it's 2 systems.
It's one Burl mothership and then a second Burl mothership that's just AES only.
I see. And then I think we can get into this more, but one of the questions we had too was for you to kind of tell us more about your mixing template. You know, how's it evolved? You talked about that in a previous episode.
Yeah, I think I sent it to you.
Yeah, you did. And so Rockstars, I think that's in 171.
My mixing template is my SSL. So whereas most people would have a template in Pro Tools that they import, I import my sessions onto my SSL. So, you know, channel 3 on my SSL is always the kick drum channel. No matter how many kick drum channels there are in Pro Tools or tracks, that's my kick drum channel, right?
Nice.
4 is my snare drum channel. 5 and 6 are my toms. 7 and 8 are my overhead cymbals, whatever.
What's 1 and 2? Is that just the mixer?
Room. Yeah. 9 and 10 are drum effects. If anybody sends me crush tracks or reverbs or weird things, that's that. 11 and 12 is percussion. 13, 14 are bass. 15, 16 is piano or acoustic guitar. If there's no piano on the track, I'll put acoustic guitar there. If there is piano and acoustic guitar, piano goes on 15, 16, acoustic guitar goes on 23, 24. 16, 17 is electric guitar 1 or 1 and 2. 17, 18 is electric guitar 2 or electric guitar 3 and 4. 17, 18. 19, 20 usually is maybe solos or something. Let's see, hold it. 17, 18 is guitars. 19 and 20 is guitars. 21, 22 is guitars or synths or keyboards, things like that. 23, 24 is either acoustic guitar or solo. 25, 26 is strings, keyboards, B3, things like that, right? Other things. And then 27, 28 is the wild card. 29, 30 is background vocals. 31, 32 are the lead vocal.
Now, what's some of the logic between laying those out? So you're submixing a lot of things to the strings and keyboards pair or to other things like that. But what is it, just sort of the ability to have?
Template. No, it's a template. It's a template. So like inserts that I want on the drums are always on the drums.
Right.
So from session to session to session, that the same inserts that I want are there. Now, there are wild cards, there are things that move around, there are, whatever. But not very much. Yesterday, I mixed a track Jason Bonham played on, right? Nice. And in the middle of the song, he had a 1 minute long 3 drum kits and percussion, timbales, this crazy, Bonzo's Sons, Montrose sort of part. And I don't have enough tracks to do that. So I basically put the drums up through my console, printed them into stems, and then brought them back into a couple channels on my desk, wildcard tracks, and then did it that way. So like one drum set's playing on the left, one's on the right, and the third one's like in the middle, and then all these other things. It was pretty crazy.
That's awesome.
And very cool.
Everything should have 3 drums in it.
Yeah, three full 14-track drum sets. Yeah, love it.
So don't want to overlook this. Chad Myler, that was your question. So thanks for asking that. And you had more to your question too, which was let's see. There's a few aspects to it.
Well, here's the one thing I want to make sure everybody understands about my concept of a template.
Yeah.
If you're mixing in the box and you are, any of these guys who are mixing in the box are giving out their templates, be it Sheps or me or anybody else, whatever. What they're doing is they're picking a relatively standard set of tools and buses and just dropping whatever tracks people send onto those. Now, the difference between my world and their world is that in my world, I just set up groups of things that go to tracks, channels on my desk, but I still do have to do a balance in Pro Tools because I try to keep the faders on my console around 0 because that's where all the resolution is on your console with automation or whatever. So, there's still work that has to be done. And luckily, I have a great assistant and have had great assistants in the past who, their job is I have a B room. They open my sessions ahead of time and set up the I/O because I have exactly the same I/O on my B rig. And they open it up and get a balance of the tracks before it comes down to me. So when I open the session, I can just hit play with whatever the settings I had on it last time. And, sometimes weirdness happens and it's cool.
Yeah.
Serendipity. It's that thing that, Lid, you're old enough. But back when we had, we're rolling off tape. I've said this 100 times. You mixed the track and then after you were done, you rolled past the leader to the next track and you hit play and you just were like, well, let's see how this works.
Yeah.
I just remixed, I probably shouldn't tell you. Oh, well, it doesn't matter. I remixed a record by the old 97s.
Oh yeah, I got questions about that.
And it was a record from 99, right? And it's really great recording, but all of it was Pro Tools, but transferred from tape, right? I literally mixed the record in like 4.5 days. It was so easy. Why was that? Well, because there wasn't a bunch of bullshit plugins all over the place, and all the faders were at 0 right off the tape. It was recorded correctly. Right? So every song, as I went to the next song, it was just like, yeah, this sounds great. Mix it.
Nice.
Done. Next one. Mix it. Done. Next one. I didn't have to reinvent the wheel. And now mixing is just like, it's so much about reinventing the wheel over and over and over.
It's about making decisions that weren't made when they should have been made.
Well, yeah, that and, I get sessions, like I got a session the other day that had a tambourine track at -77. The fader was at -77.
Right.
But it was full scale. It'd been overloaded. Like, yeah, we're trying to get this great digital distortion tambourine track. I was just like, what the fuck is this? Pardon my language.
No, it's all right. You can swear anytime you fucking want.
Good.
No, I love that. And I feel like it's one of those things you discover when you're recording. Sometimes don't adjust anything. Just like get the hell away from the mic.
It's one of the big things I say all the time. I do, Mark Rubel, obviously a good friend of all of ours. The Blackbird classes back kind of pre-COVID, they have 3 classes, cycling at once. And they will come over here to my room and I will just talk at them for a couple hours about shit. And one of the things I say is, if you're recording in Pro Tools or any DAW, don't ever move the fader. Don't move the faders. Turn the mic pre up or down. Turn the mic pre up or down to get it to balance. Leave the fader at 0. And the reason is, every time you open it, in every situation, the rough mix is right there. If the faders are at 0, all you got to do is do the pans.
Mm-hmm.
And if you record in Logic and you follow that mantra, right? And then you have to send files to me to mix. Don't send them to me in Logic, because I'm going to tell you in FW.
No, you're going to send them to all to you in stereo instead, right?
Yeah, well, yeah, exactly. Well, that's the other thing. But if you just consolidate the WAV files and export them out, and I import them into Pro Tools, they'll come up at faders at 0. I'll hit play and the record will work. I don't have to reinvent the wheel. So leave the fucking faders at 0.
So we should give a shout out, Vance, to those of you who are in Logic and you're trying to export files and get them over to the next person.
Don't send them in stereo unless they're stereo.
Yeah, but Logic is a lot of times just going to do that anyway. There's a great tool called Stereo Monoizer that you can dump all those files into, and it will tell you which ones are mono. It'll ditch the ones you don't want and everything. So it's a great way to like narrow that stuff down really quickly.
Cool.
And I can't remember if it's free, but it's cheap if it's not.
Well, whatever it's worth it.
Atom Audio can provide all your monitor needs, whether you are setting up a first-time home studio for recording music or podcasts, or a world-class studio for professional mixing and mastering. Their unique accelerated ribbon tweeter design is famous for creating smooth, detailed imaging that let your speakers disappear into your music, allowing you to focus on the mix. Learn how to set up your studio monitors and control room for great sound, plus lots of other cool studio tips at atom-audio.com/education. If you're ready to upgrade your studio to the famous sound of API's large format consoles, then you're ready for The Box, a small format console featuring the same analog circuitry and original 2520 op-amp design that has made API famous for 50 years. Record through 8 world-class mic pre-channels, mix through 24 smooth-as-glass faders, and upgrade your home studio to legendary status. API now offers a virtual console experience, allowing you to get a personalized online demo of The Box at apiaudio.com. So Chad Myler also had some other parts to his question. Let me see if I can, let me just jump to his last question here, which is, he said, tell us more about your grandfather's work with the FBI on early systems. Fascinating, he said.
Well, the deal is that my grandfather, his name was Ray Powell. He was a brick mason, right? I mean, that was his career. He was a brick mason. He just fortunately happened to be kind of an electronics genius, and he became one by building model trains. And after the war, after World War II, he built this beautiful train car that was a crane, and it moved multiple ways. The crane went up and down, the hook went up and down. It was based on a train car that he had seen, and he took pictures of it, and he made the whole thing. He manufactured the whole deal. But one of the things he did was he actually made a tube-based pulse code modulated remote control system. Wow. For it, that used a carrier and put it onto the tracks, and then passed that signal down so it had real-time control of the crane and the cab swinging and all that. And it was all tube-based, and he did the whole thing himself. I mean, it's pretty brilliant. So sometime in the 60s, I believe, he was doing some side work. He had retired, thinking about 66 or something like that, 67. Mm-hmm. He had retired from his company. And I'm not exactly sure when all this happened, but he had a buddy who had a TV repair place. Now, for those of you who don't know this, that used to be a real career. You could be a TV repairman.
Right.
Because people's TV would go out and they were big, and you'd call up your TV repair guy and he'd come to your house, he'd open the back, he'd change some tubes or whatever he needed to do, and then they'd go home and they'd fix your TV. It was great.
Fix your stereo too.
Yeah, fix your stereo, they'd fix your toaster.
Fix your record player, your turntable.
Yeah. So things we need now. Well, yeah, don't get me into that. But so this guy that had a TV repair shop, his shop was about 4 doors down from a bank in a little tiny town called Webb City, Missouri. Now, Webb City is an old mining town in Missouri. It's 5 or 6 miles from my hometown of Joplin. And this guy had a repair shop, and the bank got robbed. And they didn't have anything but an old school alarm, like where you had to pull the bell and the bell rang. And one of the folks tried to pull the bell or something, and there were shots and, whatever it was. And what they did was they came to him and they asked him if he could build something that would call the police silently. And so he had no idea how to do that. So he got my grandfather involved. And back then he had a dialer, which is this crazy thing I wish I owned. I don't. This crazy big sprocketed, I don't know what's the right word. Oh, solenoid-driven sprocket thing that dialed a number that you sort of keyed in with little pins, and it was weird. And basically, he designed a couple things for this bank. And one of the things he designed was a light-controlled trigger. Now, things like this now are, don't seem like space age, but back then, the ability to trigger something with light or with a lack of light, either way, was kind of a deal.
Yeah.
And so to get the bank certified, or like FDIC or something, I don't know what, they had to have law enforcement look at the alarm, because it wasn't like UL listed or anything. It was just built by my grandfather. And one of the guys who saw it asked who built it, and they went to my grandfather's house, and he was in the FBI. And they asked him to come to Kansas City. And from my best recollection, if I remember right, they went into a boardroom and they started asking him about it. And my grandfather told them, well, you're recording me because there's a camera behind that or there's a microphone behind that picture, and there's a camera over there, and there's this and all that. And, I'd rather you not record me. And so then they were like really interested, like, how'd you figure that out? And my grandfather's like, well, I can tell because of this and whatever. So one of the things that they asked, here's the crazy part. They asked if they could just have was this light controlled sensor. Because one of the things my grandfather did was he had shown in this little demo how it would see someone in the dark. So, and he put it behind a light switch. And even if the light switch was off, it would detect motion in the dark just by basically amping up a big photocell.
Wow.
It would. And so they basically asked him about that and ask him if he would never patent it, but if they would give it to him and to the government, and he did.
Wow,
so,
fascinating.
But he didn't make any money on it or anything. He was a really, really sweet, brilliant man. He's the first person he bought me my first computer.
Oh, really? No shit. I was going to ask if you guys were close and if he
didn't have any idea how it worked, but
yeah.
He passed in 2000. No, not 2000. That's completely wrong. That's 10 years off. He passed in 1990. And he was brilliant. It's funny. My company, Vance Powell just isn't Vance Powell. Vance Powell is actually a little set of companies because that's how we have to do business. And my grandfather's company was called Powell Company, Powell Masonry, Mason and Block Company, I think. Powell Masonry Company.
Nice.
But his logo said Powell Co. And so I ended up using that in my that part of it in my my company names. It's kind of cool. And my other grandfather was an engineer, but in the grand scheme, he was an actual engineer. Like he ran diesel, steam, gas, coal engines from very early on in his life in mines because he was a miner. And one of the coolest things he ever told me was in 1942, he was tasked, he was also demolitions. He had a demolitions license. He was tasked with demolishing the largest steam engine ever built. And at least the largest steam engine in our neck of the woods, let's put it that way. And for those of you who don't know a lot about the old world, a lot of rural parts of Missouri, Kansas, Oklahoma, Texas, they ran on Edison power. Now, does anybody here know what Edison power is? Anybody? Raise your hand.
DC.
How many volts DC, Lidge?
10?
Nope.
No, I don't know how many volts.
32. 36. 36. 32 or 36. One of the two. All right. And they were DC power. And this generator, this big steam engine was steam driven, drove a flywheel that drove a DC turbine, like not turbine, but like a generator, DC generator. Mm-hmm. And to give you an idea how big it was, there were two of them. All right. He had to destroy both of them. And why was he destroying them? Because of the war. They needed the metal. The flywheel was 4 stories high.
Good Lord.
Right? Just the flywheel. It had 2 cylinders. My grandfather said one of them was about 6 foot tall and about 12 feet. And the other was about 7 foot tall and about 12 to 15 feet long. And one of them pulled the steam in and then pushed that steam into the smaller one, which then of course exploded, spinning the wheel. So,
wow.
Yeah. So both my grandfathers were pretty interesting people. One of my grandfathers was the chief engineer at the Thunderbird Hotel in Las Vegas, and he worked for his uncle, who was a mobster. So that's a whole interesting story.
So maybe that was your introduction to the music scene?
Yeah, no, not at all. It's actually interesting. I mean, I think we're all a part of all of our parts. My father was my father still is, I guess, I don't know. My father was a master machinist, and I hate that this all sounds like a bunch of made up shit, but it's not, I promise. My dad worked for a company called Eagle Pitcher Industries, and Eagle Pitcher Industries built batteries. Now, they build batteries. They still do to this day, I think. They build batteries for military. But the batteries the only batteries that are famous that Eagle Pitcher built are the batteries on Apollo 13. Wow. So if you remember in the movie where the guy's running the cable between the two, trying to power up one set of batteries to get the limb to charge up and all that, my dad built those batteries. He machined those batteries. And when after the Apollo 13 came back, they had a very quiet sort of ceremony there in Joplin. My dad got to meet them all, shook their hands and all. Kind of cool. But yeah.
Well, dig it. Well,
sorry about all that family.
It's shit. All right, man. It's cool. Yeah. It's really cool to hear your backstory. And
I just dug stereo shit. That was the deal. I was like, I love stereos.
Right.
I'm on this Facebook page. It's like vintage hi-fi buy and sell. And I'm just always on there like, oh, I always wanted that Rotel, receiver back in 77 when I was going to the stereo buff in Joplin, and, it was $400 and I didn't have, 40 cents to my name. It's kind of cool.
So here's another question. This one comes in from Caleb Hawkins. And he says, I would love to hear your thoughts, Vance, on the overly saturated sound records have been getting these days. Your work with Jack White sent a sonic ripple through the last decade, and there's been a lot more dirt on records now. What are your thoughts on that?
Well, that's interesting. I thank you. I think that that there's been a bunch of folks for a while who have been like dirtying up tracks. I mean, long before I came along, I mean, I'm thinking like Nine Inch Nails, Downward Spiral, like that's some dirty shit, man. And it's fucking awesome sounding. But I think that people started, I mean, the Beatles were the first group to put distortion on or feedback on a record. I mean, that's kind of, it's been going on for a while, obviously. I don't know. I think that it goes both ways, because I think that there are artists that I really love that have done that, and I thought it was awesome. And then their next record, they did the same thing, and I thought, wow, okay, that's sounds kind of the same. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
I know that Jack and I, we never really thought about, like, oh, we want this sonic palette to happen.
Right.
When the first real whole record I did with Jack's was the very first Dead Weather record. That record, the band played in the control room or in the tracking room, and I recorded it. I was the only one in there. So I just stuck my big fat thumb in all of that because there was nobody else there. I mean, Jack would come in and listen and be like, that's great. How about this? And then he'd go out and they would go out and play. And then, I mean, there was somebody there. There's no producer in the room with me telling me what to do. So, but like if you listen to either of the first two Dead Weather records and then you listen to Blunderbuss, I mean, Blunderbuss is like all these acoustic guitars. There's not, it's much cleaner. It's much different thing. We didn't try to do that. It just was a different feel. The record was a different feel. What bums me out is I hear artists like, we want this record to sound like a Chad Blake record, so we're going to use Decapitator on everything. Well, that's not what Chad Blake's doing. That guy's fucking awesome. I've been loving that guy's work since way back. I mean, way, way, way back. And that's not what he's doing. I mean, I don't think that's what he's doing. But people, they know he uses it. They know it's a thing. I mean, those Black Keys records, there's a lot of distortion on there. And but I don't think that that's his plan, is to make every record sound like that. And I don't think anybody should do that. So, I think at times we can get away with dirt. I can tell you right now, there are very few things that I add distortion to when I'm mixing. Now, there are a few things I do because I like the way they sound. I usually add a little bit of distortion to every B3 track because I like the sound of a B3 turned up loud.
Yeah.
Spencer Davis Group, what I'm saying? Or John Lord, like that's a fucking sound, man. And I love that. And so I will do that a little bit there. I will often use a little more distortion. I'll use preamp distortion on a guitar solo. Like I'll, maybe do the 1073 in the box, the 1073, the UA, like I'll make a parallel and I'll put it on and crank up the mic pre, crank it to mic pre, and then
now, will the UAD do that thing that a analog 1073 will do? It'll go into fuzz mode and all that.
It will.
Wow.
You have to kind of trick it. You can't just turn the knob on the screen. You have to click the mic pre side of it. You have to click on the number and it'll move. And it gets fast. It gets really fast, really fast. So you got to be careful with it, but it does. I mean, I overload my 1073s all the time. I'll record 2 tracks. I'll mult it into a pair of 1073s. One's clean, one's dirty. And then here's a pro tip, everybody. So bing, there should be a little bell. Yeah. Should be a little bell. Bing. Bing, pro tip. Let's say you want to put some distortion on your vocals, but you want to make sure that, you can adjust it later if that's what you want to do. Record it into 2 tracks, but use a stereo track and then just pan it to the center. Now, why would you do that? Well, one, you don't have to group it if you start editing it, right? And let's say it's a vocal and let's say the vocalator you might want to tune. If you're going to tune it, if it's a stereo track, the phase will stay consistent. But if it's two different tracks, it will not.
When are they going to figure that out for multi-tracks? That's what I want to know.
Well, you're asking for something that you shouldn't be asking for anyway.
Yeah.
But
probably.
I record two guitar tracks all the time. I'll record like a 57 and a 67 on two tracks. If we have to do edits or whatever, I just make a stereo track. I just throw it onto a stereo track. I can always break them apart later. It's easy. It's easy.
Yeah.
So, but I've been doing vocals like that forever. I record Chris Stapleton, obviously, or I have been, obviously, for the last few years. And Chris likes the sound of a Coles on his vocal mic. Now, I love the sound of his vocal on a Coles too. It's very flat. It's very rich. It's beautiful. But sometimes in the mix, we need something a little more forward, right?
Right.
So I use a U47. We lock them really close together. I get them as absolutely close together as I can using a latch like ping, product placement, stands. And then I record that through a stereo compressor so that two control each other, and 1073s, put it to a stereo track. And that's how every Chris Stapleton record is made. There's two vocal mics.
Right on.
And if you take one side away, it's like, wow, that's totally, that doesn't sound, I mean, that sounds great, but not like as good as it did before.
And any trick for lining up those two mics so that they're in phase or anything like that?
Well, it's easy. You can see the capsule on a 47, and on a Coles, the ribbon is on the edge of the mic. You can see it. So you just line them up. You just get them as close as you possibly can, right? As close to each other as you possibly can. And the other thing is you just make sure the singer isn't singing right on either of them. He sings normally about a foot back. He's about this far back. I've moved back about a foot.
Picture rock stars.
He's not way up here. He sings back. So that's great. So those two mics, the phase, if there is any phase difference, and I don't think there is, if there is any phase difference, it's inconsequential because he's singing a foot back. So, and the other thing is, fuck it. If it sounds good, who gives a shit, right? Like, does that sound good? Yes, that sounds great. Okay, cool. We can debate about it, whether it's right or wrong all day long, but fuck it, it sounds good. So, there you go.
The Spectra 1964 Custom Shop now offers the STX100D, the big brother to the now famous STX100, a fully discrete mic pre with dual transformer isolated Spectra 101 amplifiers. The STX100D is exactly the same original circuit found in Stax, Arden, Advision, A&M, and Record Plant recording consoles. The sonic performance is identical. Best of all, it will plug into a single space of your standard 500 lunchbox. And if you want to add the sound of the famous Spectra C610 comp limiter, then check out the new STX600 modules, combining the STX100 mic pre and C610 in a single 500 module. That's how you're hearing my voice. Now you can get that same incredible sound in your studio that worked for famous producers like Tom Dowd with the STX mic pre's, BBDI, and comp limiters. Go to Spectra1964.com or call 801-797-0642. Whether you're in the studio or working remotely, the Envoy Pro FX from OWC lets you record from anywhere with confidence. It pushes USB technology bandwidth to the max of 2,800 megabytes per second over Thunderbolt, giving you high-speed audio data and recording and playback. Transfer tracks in seconds and take your sessions with you anywhere you go. Built for the road, the OWC Envoy Pro FX is waterproof, dustproof, and crushproof. Creativity without limits, only from OWC. Imagine never having to worry about your external drive interface again or compatibility from studio to studio. Find the new Envoy Pro FX and all your storage needs at maxsales.com/rockstars. iZotope is a secret weapon for your studio that can help you get consistently pro-sounding mixes. And now you can get access to all their plugins through the new subscription options. Only $24.99 per month, Music Production Suite Pro is designed for the serious recording, mixing, and mastering engineer, putting the finishing touches on music, film, and podcasts with fully pro versions of Ozone, RX, Neutron, Nectar, Neoverb, Tonal Balance Control, Visual Mixer, and much more, including free plugin updates. Or for only $19.99 per month, you can join Producers Club to get a suite of industry-leading production, mixing, and mastering plugins, custom presets, royalty-free samples, production courses, and more. Start your 7-day free trial subscription now or go to iZotope.com/rockstars and use the code ROCK10 to get 10% off any individual plugin purchase. Coupon not valid for subscriptions or Spire Studio. Hey, Rockstars, we're back now for the jam session. My guest today is Vance Powell, joining us from Sputnik. And you're in your studio, right?
You almost said Vance, dude.
Did I? You think I did? No, I'm guilty of making mistakes like that, but I didn't. I don't think
I'm kidding. I'm kidding.
Is there a Vance Powell we need to know about?
No, but there is a Lance Powell who's an engineer. I met him at Tape Op a few years back, and he said, "Hey, my name's Vance Powell." And I said, "I'm really fucking sorry, dude. You're fucked. Sorry about that."
Well, you know Roger Allen Nichols, and of course he's always, so he uses his middle name all the time to differentiate. And then I started out over at Alex the Great working with Brad Jones, who's a bass player and a producer. And then there was another Brad Jones, who's also a bass player in New York. And so he was always sort of competing for space there too.
I used to get Amy Grant phone calls at Blackbird all the time. Amy would call and ask for Vince, and they'd send her to me.
Nice.
When Vince Gill was working there. So,
well, I'm pretty sure Elijah Shaw is a football player or somebody like that too.
Yeah.
No, I think he's a bodyguard.
Sure. Sure.
Let me ask you this. So you were talking about adding distortion. One of the questions I wrote down was, is it better to add more mics to a drum kit and treat those with distortion, or add distortion as a send on the drum mix? And how about for similar effects like slap delays or any special effects on a drum recording? Because I know you do a lot of cool stuff to drums.
Well, my goal is to record drums with as few mics as possible. Now, that being said, it doesn't always work. I mean, it depends on the drummer. It depends on the room you're in. It depends on the record. All the Dead Weather records, there's 5 mics on the drums. And all those 5 mics went to 1 or 2 tracks total, right? Mm-hmm. So, I pretty much had to, I'm mixing the drums for the record as we're recording. I love that. I do. It's always interesting after the fact, like, oh, the snare's not loud enough. And now, when I'm writing automation, I just turn up the drum track every time the snare happens, kick, snare, up a dB, down a dB, up a dB, down a dB, you know what I mean? That's just how you have to do it. Oh, there needs to be more hi-hat. Oh, I'll just turn the 10K up, but I do record, usually I record, a kick mic or 2, usually 2, honestly. Snare, top and bottom. I'm a big bottom snare fan because I love the sound of rattly shit.
Yeah.
Overhead, a rack tom, a floor tom. Sometimes I do the side thing, like the Glen half. I call it the half Glen, which is 1 overhead mic and 1 over by the floor tom.
Yeah.
I usually always put 1. Like if you're the drummer, you're sitting behind the drums. You look under the rack tom and the hi-hat, like over the snare, out on the floor. There's a mic, and that I call it the front. And it's kind of weird. It kind of gets like the bottom of the snare, the bottom of the rack tom, and the kick just a little bit on that side of the room, right? And that usually ends up in my drum effects that come up on my desk on 9 and 10, right? And then I have this little knee mic thing. I use this Ampex 1101. It's this wacky Ampex mic that was sold in Ampex home stereo reel-to-reels, like an Ampex 405 or a Fine Line or FS40 or whatever. And they come in a little box, and they're plastic. They got a plastic box and a plastic bag inside them. They're kind of weird. They look like a bent finger. They're, I think, Omni. And they're 1/4 inch, so they're unbalanced, right? I run that out to a DI, and then in my control room, I have a loop. I have a couple different ones, but what's that thing called? A radial XTC, ecstasy.
Mm-hmm.
And it's a 1/4 inch it's a, +4 -10 loop, basically.
Right, like
and
a reamp box.
Like a reamp box, but it's a send and a return and a 500 rack.
Right.
It's really cool. So that goes out. I have this old, what's that pedal called? Oh, Pigtronics. Yeah, it's a Pigtronics Polysat. They don't make it anymore, but there are a bunch of them out there. Really cool pedal. And then I have a custom pedal that my old assistant, Lowell Reynolds, gave to me for my birthday once. It's this custom pedal. And it's called a Beard Verb. And it's basically an analog Bucket Brigade delay and a distortion pedal.
Wow.
And I never used the distortion, but I used the Bucket Brigade all the time. And something with the wet-dry balance is kind of fucked. And so it doesn't really quite work. It never really turns off. So when I turn the mix all the way down, I don't get any echo, but I just still get all the weird filtering from the Bucket Brigade. So I don't know what it is. I'm not going to ask. I'm going to keep using it until it breaks, and then I'm really going to be fucked. I'll have to find something else. But and I use that kind of pointing at the drummer's, I don't want to say the knee, because that's not really true, but because it's actually kind of pointing at the side of the snare. So over the top of the kick drum, on the beater side of the kick drum, pointing at the side of the snare. And I just record that, and that's part of this sound that I've been putting in records for ages now that I just really like.
Yeah.
And I turn the delay up and I turn it down, and I time it so that it's triplets sometimes, and sometimes it's sometimes it's it's just and then later, if I hate it, I get rid of it. So
well, that's cool. And that segues to a question we got in from David Strite. And
hey, David.
It's sort of like, you're reminding me that these, what you just described, I think sometimes people are looking for like a universal answer, like what's the best distortion mic to use, which of course is like, there isn't such a thing. It's like you are a painter and you've discovered this color in your palette and you love it and you know how to use it, so you use it. But David's question is similar. So it's, what are your thoughts on building a signature sound for each artist or project you work on? And is that something you think about going into a project? How do you approach choosing a sonic palette? So same topic.
Well, I wish that I was cool enough, honestly, to say, yes, I chose a sonic palette for every record. But I really don't. What ends up happening is the sound of the record kind of evolves from what I want it to be in my head to what it ends up in your CD player or on your turntable. And I don't think anybody in their right mind would honestly say that they have this great idea and that at the end of the record, it sounds exactly like what their great idea was.
Right.
I would call the bullshit on that. Because I just don't think it ever happens. Records, the sound of the record sort of happens based on what room you're in, what time of the year it is. I know that's going to sound weird, but I'll get back to that in a minute. What's for lunch, like what the schedule of the record is, Are we starting at noon? Are we working till midnight? Are we starting at 10 and working till 7 or 8? Are we banker's hours? Are we coming in at 5 and working till 5, like Lidge made me do once? I mean, 5 a.m. to 5 a.m.
Yeah. Well,
Yes.
Did I really make you do it, or was I just, I think I was stuck on that train too.
Yeah. Okay. But that's a whole nother story. But the fact of the matter is, you admit that changed the sound of that
Right.
project.
Right.
Right. So, people come up with great ideas at 3 a.m., especially when it's rock bands and substances are happening and things are going on and people are drinking and smoking and partying and doing whatever. Sometimes they're great ideas. Sometimes they're really bad ideas. But those ideas, will make the sound of a record change. John Lennon wanted to be hung from the ceiling and swung in a circle around a microphone, at one time. Luckily, Jeff Emmerich said, why don't we hook your voice up to the Leslie, instead of swinging you around the room, So, and I am pretty confident that probably did not happen at 10 in the morning. Now, maybe it did, but you know what I'm saying.
What was the first feedback from the Beatles? What was the first? Do you
8
know
days
which
a
one
week.
was? 8 days a week?
Yep. 8 days a week.
Nice. Well, all right. So, your discography is so full of awesome
Shit.
sounds.
Full of shit.
No, stuff that just gets me fucking excited, man.
Oh, well, thanks.
And a lot of that, you've done a lot of records with Jack and with Raconteurs. And like, for example, one of the ones was this Jack White, Alicia Keys, Another Way to Die track, which,
it's funny. It was,
obviously that one probably had a lot of thought go into it for an arrangement quite like that. Maybe not, I don't know. But what, relative to this time of day question, how do you apply that thinking to a production like that?
Well, I think that the statute of limitations is probably up on me talking about all that. That all came about because basically Jack had been asked to do that a couple of years before and he turned it down.
Mm-hmm.
And then Amy Winehouse, rest in peace, had taken it on. But to be honest with you, she was too messed up to do it. Mm. And so Mr. Ronson backed out and they were kind of stuck. The movie was stuck.
Yeah, was this a Bond film?
This is a Bond film.
Right,
yeah,
right.
This is Quantum of Solace.
Right.
They were stuck. So they asked Jack again, and the Bond themes work: male singer, female singer, male singer, female singer, right?
Yeah.
And that's how it's been forever. Madonna, then Chris Cornell, or somebody, then Chris Cornell, and then it was going to be Jack White. But Jack really didn't want to. No, I'm sorry, Chris Cornell. Then it was supposed to be a female. And I think they'd asked Beyonce and she wanted like immense amounts of money. Annie Lennox was in the thing. Alicia Keys was in it. But they wanted Jack to produce it. And so Jack stopped by my studio one day like at 5 p.m. and was like, can you work tonight on something? And I said, sure. And then about 1 a.m, he's like, so this is for the next James Bond movie. I'm like, oh. I mean, it was just a demo, right?
Yeah. So
then he went back out on the road with the Raconteurs, and then he called and he's like, hey, we need to book Blackbird or someplace to do this. And can you make that happen? So yeah, we booked it, and then we went in, we took my original Pro Tools demo and striped it onto tape, and then we put it onto tape, and then we cut it up a whole bunch, added some pieces, restriped the tape again with time code, added some more pieces, cut some pieces out, edited some pieces, added things. And then Jack left for a day. And well, I was like, why are you leaving in the middle of this? But then come to find out, he was doing some sessions with Keith Richards.
Oh, cool.
And then he came back, and then it was like, yeah, I've got Alicia Keys coming tonight. Like, what? Like, yeah, she's coming to sing on this. I'm like, oh, holy shit, okay. And so we worked through the day, got the song in a place for her to sing it. Jack had already sang it once on the demo, but there were some lines that they wanted him to change. He had this really great rhyme that was like, some Monty Penny sent honey to save you in the nick of time, or something like that. And they were like, yeah, we're not, Monty Penny's not in this movie, so you got to take that out. and so he had to fix some lines, but they wanted Alicia Keys to sing it. Well, Alicia came in. She's like, I love your vocal. It's awesome. Let me just sing on the chorus. And he's like, no. Why don't you sing the verses? She's like, why don't we each sing it?
Yeah.
And so it ended up being the only duet in Bond history.
Well, so it's really cool to hear you tell this story, because one of the questions I wrote down was, when I hear it, I think it's remarkable how you guys managed to make their voices sound almost the same. Do you feel that? Do you remember noticing that? I mean, they're really unified.
I kind of used the same deal. On Jack's vocal, he actually was singing into this other Ampex mic I have through a little Fender Deluxe reverb. And then when Alicia got there, of course, I set up like a 251, but it was so clean that I had set up this Ampex and the Deluxe in the room there, and I just recorded her vocal with the distortion. So they both had the same thing. She's a little cleaner than he is, but yeah, it was interesting. The crazy thing was they showed up about 4. They flew in from New York, but she had to be back in New York for like a private appearance at 11. So, I mean, by 9 o'clock, she was done. And they literally jetted back to the airport and flew to New York, got on a helicopter and flew into town. And she did this private appearance in New York.
Wow.
And it was super. And then after that, we did strings. So we had 2 violins, 1 5-string violin, basically playing the viola part, and a cellist, right? Or maybe 2 cellists. And we did the strings, and I think I got done about 2:30 in the morning. We came back to the studio in the morning. We did the Memphis horns in the morning, like Wayne Jackson and the Memphis horns in the morning. Wow. And then this kid from Belmont showed up with his double bass, his upright. And the first thing Jack did was just blow his mind. And that was, we cut the bass in very speed. So we sped it up, right? So that he could play at the bottom, play an open, right? So instead of like, having to fret it, he's just playing open. And the kid's like, what are you guys doing? Like he could not figure out why this track was going, like 2 steps fast, 2 steps fast, right? Wow. Of course, all this is all tape. This is all 16 track. Yeah. It's 2 16-track tapes, slave reel, the whole deal, right? And then when we played it back for him in real time, and it's now a whole step down, a whole step down.
Huge, right?
His mind was like, he's just like, oh man, like, wow, because his bass didn't have the extended fretboard, true double bass. So we just had to make it.
That's wild.
Cool.
And so that drops the pitch of the note, but it also drops all the overtones and harmonic and the finger noise on the fret.
These are things that Pro Tools cannot do it. You can vary speed Pro Tools if you have, a sync, but to be honest with you, it's not exactly. It doesn't really work. Doesn't really work.
Yeah, it seems like my Pro Tools used to have the very speed, and then I got HDX, and now I don't have it. But I think
it's because you don't have a sync.
Yeah,
it's because you don't have a sync. If you have a sync, you can do very speed.
Now, does the UAD Luna include very speed?
No,
it doesn't. Here's my request.
We got a long list of things. There's a lot of stuff that it doesn't have.
Here's my request to all DAWs. Include very speed, and please give us reverse record.
Oh,
so we can do backwards again.
Well, you can do it.
I know it's too much brain power every time I want to do it.
Yeah, I mean, I'm sure it can be. I'm sure they could do it. I mean, it's.
Yeah.
It's just there's a lot of dumb math there going backwards. The problem for me with all that, I mean, I've done it 100 times where I've just recorded the track, right?
Mhm.
And then flipped it over, right? And then, like, okay, now play to that. And then flip the whole thing back. You know what I mean?
Mhm.
Um, but yeah, I'm with you. It's, they should be able to do that.
Yeah.
I mean, vari-speed is complicated because now you're changing pitch
Samples and everything.
and samples and all that. The great thing was, we had Studer 8, either an 800, Jack had 800s, I had an 800, and Blackbird had 827s, and I have now an 827, is you can just vari-speed them up or down a half step at a time, which is brilliant.
You don't have to find the speed.
You don't have to, no, you just go, a half step. So, you go up a half step and you play the track down a half step. And that, or you go down a half step and you play the track up a half step, which is what we were doing.
It would be hard to describe in one sentence what gives records a legendary sound, but it would be easy to describe in 3 letters: API. For more than 50 years, API Audio has created large format consoles for world-class studios. Famous for co-founder Saul Walker's circuit designs and the original 2520 op-amp, the sound of API consoles is the sound of great music. API now brings that legendary sound to your home studio with the Box, a small format console featuring the famous API circuitry that is the perfect analog addition to your digital studio. The Box gives you 8 recording channels on the left with built-in mic pre's, high-pass filters, direct inputs, and customizable 500 module slots, and 16 summing channels on the right. Or you can mix using all 24 channels, including aux sends, inserts, and silky smooth faders. API now offers a virtual console experience with a personalized online demo of the Box, 16082 or 2448 consoles. Sign up for your demo now at apiaudio.com. Making sure your vocal sounds amazing in your mix starts with capturing your voice perfectly. This means controlling sibilants and plosives at the mic. Back when I started out, we used to make pop filters out of pantyhose and a wire hanger, but not only did it not look good or smell great, but it also didn't sound all that great either. There's a reason that the Beastie Boys said they never rocked the mic with the pantyhose. Fortunately, pop filters have come a long way in the studio, and Jay-Z Mics brings you the ultimate pop filter, built from solid metal parts that won't break and a flexible gooseneck for easy placement. The Jay-Z pop filter uses a unique waveguide design that prevents plosives from getting through to the mic while letting important high frequencies through for clarity. Get your vocals just right and use the limited time coupon ROCKSTARS to get 20% off the amazing pop filter at jzmic.com. All right, so here's another question. This one comes in from Scott Gribble, and it's a little more on the harmony stuff. He just said one other thing. If you could talk about approach to background harmony vocals, tracking and mixing, differences between lead and backing vocals, et cetera. It's something that you didn't talk about much before. He was thinking. And another question I have relevant to that is, can you talk about, sometimes you pan vocals out left and right, backgrounds. And I've noticed that if the parts are different, it can throw your ability to balance the levels on them. The low part, maybe the high part seems louder than the low part. Can you talk about those kind of things a little bit?
Well, I think, the answer to that, right, is you just double them. And you just double them, and then you put, a set of harmony on one side and a set of harmony on the other side.
Okay, right.
Right. I mean, that's the easiest way to do it. And I do that all the time. I mean, the thing I'll do, I'm not like, okay, let me back up. Often I will set up a vocal mic for the lead vocal. And then when we go to do background vocals, like if I was doing background vocals, and I have my 47 Coles set up, like I may do all the background vocals with the Coles.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? But I may do doubles with the 47. One of them's on input 23, one's on 24. I'll mix them up a bit I just did that the other day. We had to do a big stack vocal thing for a good friend of mine, and that cockerel. And he stacks vocals big time. He does
That's great.
8. He's awesome. And so to kind of balance that out, I did, Coles for 3, then the 47 for 3, and then cross pan the 47 and the Coles together, or put the 47 on one side and the Coles on the other, or.
Yeah.
And so all those stacks, so all the frequencies that each mic is inherent to isn't building up. I'm not an EQ while doing vocals guy either, really.
Mm-hmm.
I don't really. I just pick another mic if it doesn't work.
Now, what about moving around on the mic itself? Do you coach the singer to just
step back a foot, step back 2 feet,
turn your head, sing to the side?
Yeah, exactly. All that. Yeah.
Sing away from the mic.
Yeah. Step back 2 feet. Go back in the room a bit. One of the things we did with Jack, which anybody can do, this is not genius shit here or stuff that's hard, is we would do, we'd set up 3 vocal mics for him, right? Now, I'm going to try to explain this. So one of them would be the mic that I am pretty confident we're going to use, right? Often for Jack, it was the 77. We used the 77 a lot, okay? Then I would take a 47 and I would put that, I put the 77 on like a boom stand, but almost like a straight stand, right? So if you wanted to reach out and put his hand on it, he could, Usually he never did, but he could. And then I would put a 47 on a boom right next to it, and a Coles on a boom right next to the 77 on the other side. So if you're looking at the microphones on the left sides of 47, the 77's in the middle, Coles is on the right. Okay. And then I would take another mic on that 77, our little Ampex mic, and I'd put that down to a little amp on the floor with a 57 on it. Right.
Mm-hmm.
And then what we would do is we would sort of figure out which mic fit the track. I would just switch between them, all going to a bus. Right. And then sometimes it was the 77, but with the distortion. Sometimes it was just the distortion. Sometimes it was the Coles and distortion. Sometimes, you see what I'm getting at? I just have them all on my desk. So I can turn them off and on.
You can carve it when the singing's happening.
Right. But the other thing is, if we weren't using the 47 or the Coles, I would just have him swing it. I would leave the clutch a little loose. I'd just have him swing it out of the way 45. Mm-hmm. Right? So now it's pointing off to the left, and I'd have him swing the Coles off to the right. And then I would put those mics on in the room and in the mix. So now there's an amp in the room. It's not on very loud, but there's an amp, a lot of times through a pedal for distortion. Mm-hmm. And that amp is just throwing out into the room. And then these 2 microphones are picking it up. Plus there's these close mic. And basically that's the blunderbuss. That's the vocal sound in blunderbuss, because there's not a lot of effects on his vocal. That's unlike cool. Dead Weather and all that. So we just use the room as part of that sound. Now, I have found lately, I did a thing for Chris. You can find this online, by the way. For Jimmy Kimmel, we recorded a track for Jimmy Kimmel show, and it was the song Starting Over from the new record. But we recorded it in this warehouse here in town at an undisclosed warehouse, and on this rig that I built for him for his live recordings, which is 64 Cappy VP28 mic pre's, right?
Nice.
And 64 Burl mothership, 2 motherships, 64 inputs. And then I think there's 8 outs. And we recorded that, and then I brought it back here and I mixed it here. Well, he's singing on a vocal mic through monitors, right? Mm-hmm. I think it's an SE vocal mic, right? Mm-hmm. And to be honest with you, it was too close. It didn't feel intimate enough. It felt too intimate, right. He was too close. Right. So when I mixed it, I used the UAD Oceanway plugin, mm-hmm. and I just put it on his vocal track. Literally, just put it on the stereo track or on the mono track. Right? I didn't make it stereo; I just made it mono, And then I just added a little bit of that room in, and it got exactly what I wanted. Because normally he sings a foot back, right? It just gave me this little bit of air, but now he's singing right up on it, like I am right now. And it was too close.
Yeah, it can sound claustrophobic, right?
Yeah. So that room thing, it's a cool thing. I mean, your vocal booth doesn't have to be dead. I never record vocals here at my studio, ever in the booth. Ever.
Yeah.
Always out in my room.
I do that too. Sometimes I listen and I'm like, wow, I've got a lot of room reverb on this, but I just like it.
In the mix,
Yeah.
I mean, unless there's a lot, and then use a gobo, tighten it up or something. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Something.
Yeah.
So,
all right. Well, so let's talk more about, so that was great. Thank you for diving into that.
Sure.
But let's go back to drums a little bit. We got a couple of questions in this, or a question in from Christopher Lee Kleiner, and also reiterated from John Keel, sorry, John. And it's, if you have any comments you want to make on getting good drum sounds at home in a small room, whether it's mic configurations, just stuff to try. I mean, you talked about the difference between recording drums at home and in a pro studio. What tips do you give artists that you're working with if they're going to record at home?
I think the thing that I say is if you're in a small room, if you're in bedroom, living room sized room, right, and your drummer is going to beat the shit out of things, the fewer mics, the better.
Right.
Because what's going to end up happening is there's so much early reflection off the walls. It's just going to get really smeary.
Mm-hmm.
And so what would be better is, a mic in the room and just, put headphones on or something and have somebody move it around until you can sort of hear all the drums. And that's your main sound. That's the main sound. One good mic, a good ribbon or a condenser or something, or a dynamic, 421, something. And then something to provide a little bit of low frequency for the kick, but nothing close. Put it a foot back. You know what I mean? And then if you want to add a snare mic, put a top snare mic on it, but just don't use a lot of mics. There's no need for stereo. First of all, drums aren't really in stereo. They're only in stereo if you're like listening to like anything from 73 to, 81.
Mm-hmm.
If you're listening to Baker Street and you're listening to the toms go left and right, or Fleetwood Mac, or all those classic rock records where there were super dead toms that went boom, boom, and people played drums, or In the Air Tonight or whatever, drums are pretty mono. They're kind of right in front of you.
Yeah, it's the kick and the snare mostly, right?
The drummer's right in front of you, right there. There's not a tom 100 feet over here and another one over here. That's an effect. Totally cool effect. I get it, but it's an effect. So, they don't have to. You don't have to do that.
Thank you. Let me dig deeper into some drum stuff. One of the things, you do a lot of rock stuff. You do a lot of recordings that sound saturated and distorted, but somehow in a really
purely by accident.
Yeah, but not in the way that I might stumble on, where it just sounds like it's like, hash in your face. It's controlled. And one of the elements of that is cymbals are never too much or anything. So what are some good ways to tame and control cymbals?
Take them
They're
away.
Too bright. Yeah.
Cymbals are what drummers hit when they don't have a better idea.
Yeah.
The thing I always say, I mean, I'm kidding, but, for better or for worse, like every Tom Petty record, listen to when Stan hits cymbals. You know what I mean? Like, at the end of the verse, like we're going into the chorus, cymbal.
Yeah.
And it's not like, bam, I hit the fuck out of it. It's like, cymbal, crash, we go to the ride. Now we're in the chorus. I'm going to ride the ride, No, not really. He just kept playing the hi-hat,
What about when somebody gives you a track and it's already there? You know, are there some tricks for kind
Oh,
of just taming it?
you
I mean,
know,
should we
the
just turn
best
the high frequency down on the overheads? Is it that easy?
sometimes it's just turn them off. I mean, if people have recorded a lot of mics and there's a bunch of cymbals, I mean, I have mixed records where, you know, the cymbals were the tom bleed and the hi-hat bleed.
Yeah.
You know, it's like, you know, if it sucks, it sucks.
Some of my worst cymbal sounds are the ones that come through the tom mics. That's where I
Of
learned to
course,
clean them up, you know?
or 421s, they're terrible at that. And
Yeah.
people use those all the time, you know?
Um, have you found any tom mics that sort of have become favorites where you're like, these do the best job of
I
getting rid
don't
of it?
have any. I wish I did, but Josephson's are really fucking nice.
Yeah.
I also have got a set of the Earthworks drum mics.
Hmm.
And I kind of came upon them. The Fish guys had them, and John Fish he plays 8 toms, right? And so it's like, okay, well, I'm not getting. I mean, I would use like 87s, you know, or like 40 spec 47s, you know, or something like something
For tom
something
mics?
for tom mics, you know,
Wow.
like yeah, if I had them, if I was a Blackbird.
Yeah.
87s are fucking badass as tom mics. But yeah, we didn't have them. We didn't have, and there's no room for them, you
Right.
know. So the Earthworks were pretty great, and their little tom clamp, they clamp on, and we clamped them to his a couple cymbal stands, and they were great. I mean, they sounded awesome, and so I bought a pair. I got a pair.
Yeah. I like
But
clip-on mics when you can get
but
them.
I'll use. I mean, you know, the problem with clip-on mics is that, you know, they do change the drum and they do resonate with the drum. But like, I'll use a pair of 87s on floor tom, you know, or like an 87 on the top and like a Beta 52 on the bottom, you know, because to be honest with you, floor tom really takes 2 mics to sound right.
Really? Talk
Yeah,
more about
yeah.
that, because I haven't been doing that.
Well, do you ever take the bottom head off your toms?
No. I mean,
Okay.
not often.
So when this is done, rock stars, go out in where your drums are. If you have drums, get a stick, reach down, put your hand on the bottom head, right? And just hold it and hit the top head. That's what the microphone hears, period. Now, if you take your hand off and you hit it, you're going to hear all this tone. If you put a mic down there, you have to flip it out of phase. Now you're going to get that whole tom, because that whole tom, the sound of the resonant head is on the bottom. That's a pitch, and the pitch on the top. I did that. I went on the road with Clutch before I recorded them, and their front of house guy, who was very nice. I said, "Do you ever mic the bottom of the floor tom?" He's like, "No." And, you know, and I'm an old front of house guy, so I know the drill, you know.
Right.
Some recording guy showing up at the gig, you know, going, "You ever do that?" And you're like, "Yeah, fuck you, dude. You don't have to put that shit up every day. Fuck off." You know, I mean, I used to be that guy for sure.
Yeah.
But he's like, "No." I go, "Hey, you should just try it." He's like, "Well, I do have a spare Sennheiser, like a spare kick mic." I go, "Well, man, try it." He goes, "Well, I've got this line." I go, "Well, just hand me the mic. I'll go put it underneath it, and you can have your drummer or have the drum tech, you know, hit the drum." He's like, "Okay." So when I plugged it in, I just held the mic underneath it, right? And the drum tech hit the floor tom, and it fucking sounded like an 808, man. It was like boom, and he's like, "Oh my god!" And so he's like, "We need a stand," and like, you know, like,
we need a gate.
yeah. Well, and the funny thing is that, of course, he gates them, and I said, "Just key this gate off the top, but make it a little longer, because it goes a little longer."
Right.
And he did it, and man, I mean, all night it was like boom, 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 boom. You know, I could like really hear that big ass floor tom, and then I saw him again. A little while later, and there it was.
What a cool tip you just gave us so quickly too, which is 2 mics on the toms, but just gate the bottom one, but key it off the top so that it triggers to open. Maybe the top one doesn't need the gate on it, but the bottom one.
Yeah. Just key it from the top one.
Yeah, that's cool.
Yeah. And it's your mileage may vary. It doesn't have to be a great mic either. I mean, it could be a 57. I use 57 all the time.
Yeah.
It's just really the resonance, not so much the tone, but it's just that resonance. But 57, 58, a 421 is weird because it's awkward sized, but like a Beta 52, perfect. Slides right up underneath there.
Mm-hmm.
Just flip it out of phase.
What about
Check it out.
AKG D112?
I don't like them.
All right,
so.
There you go. That's what I was fishing for right there.
Maybe a D112 on the top.
Yeah.
But no, they just got that weird point. It's like, I don't know. I mean, maybe for a metal record,
What about adding reverb and effects and room sounds? You started to talk about that a little bit. With vocals,
I always record
on drums.
I always record a room mic or two for drums.
But what about the kick drum? Do you ever actually feed the kick drum to a room sound in your mixing process?
Yes.
You do. All right.
From time to time. I have an old digital reverb device called a Clark Technic DN780. It is from 1984, 85. I'm sure it's probably 12 bits at best.
Mm-hmm.
They were very expensive at the time. They're about $1,000 now. And I just fucking love the room sounds because they sound just like the 80s, to be honest with you. And there is a gated drum sound, which is exactly a ripoff of the In the Air Tonight, But and there's a patch that's like the old AMS. Remember that AMS room that everybody used?
Yeah.
This one's called Alive, which is crazy. Alive. But I use that all the time for snare to just put a little bit extra spoop on it.
Mm-hmm.
Sploop, sploopy, tinkle, swivel, whatever, some word. And from time to time, I will put that on the kick drum too.
I wonder if that's the one. I don't know if I can find it that quickly. There was one of the Chris Stapleton mixes.
I've never used it. I've never used it on that. Chris Stapleton's different because what we did is like depending on. Like if you listen to Tennessee Whiskey, there's all this room sound on the drums. Well, the drums were recorded in the booth, but RCA had these big, like Voice of the Theaters out in the room, and I had a room mic out there, and when no one was around, or when they were eating dinner, or when people were bullshitting, I don't know, doing things, after hours or before I got there, I blasted the drums back into the room and re-recorded that and used the sound of RCA, about 30 feet away from those Voice of the Theaters and put that back in.
That's cool.
Mastering is a guilty pleasure. It's been phenomenal to hear a client tell me that the master wasn't just perfect, but it was right. It connected. I love assisting with the mixing process by giving free feedback just because, if the mix feels some positive impact from my input, frankly, it'll be easier to master. At least 50% of the mastering is preparing the mix. If the mix is really good, most of the mastering is already done. It's much more of a conversation now from end to end. It shouldn't be a black art that's hidden behind closed doors. Shouldn't be a one-shot deal either. Even after the master is delivered, we can still work on it. We can even go back and make mix changes later and update the master for a fraction of the cost. That's the iterative master. I'm Brian Murphy of Sound Porter Mastering. Let's talk about how I can help elevate your mix into the best master possible. Contact me and get free feedback on your mix or a free master demo at soundporter.com.
Adam Audio designs monitors with a mission to bring accuracy, transparency, and high definition to your studio, guiding you each step of the way on your journey from starting out in a home studio to installing your ultimate mixing setup in your pro studio. Check out their complete line of speakers and headphones, from the T-Series to the AX Series to their top-of-the-line S-Series, which all use the unique ART accelerated ribbon tweeter design, famous for creating smooth, detailed imaging that lets your speakers disappear hear into your music. Won't it feel awesome to make brilliantly accurate, creative decisions in your mixes because you can finally hear your music clearly? Your ears are the greatest instrument you have, and if you can hear the music, then you can mix the music. Learn how to set up your studio monitors and control room for great sound, plus lots of other cool studio tips at adam-audio.com/education. Want to record killer drums in your home studio? Rockstars of Drums will show you how to record, edit, and mix pro-sounding drums with a Nashville session drummer in a Grammy-winning studio. Want to start mastering your own records? Rockstars of Mastering walks you through exactly how I mastered my own record using nothing but plugins in PreSonus Studio One. Want to learn how to create a mix that doesn't suck but rocks instead? At Mixmaster Bundle, I show you how to mix using stock and free plugins so that you can have punchy, powerful drums, guitars that rock, bass you can feel, and a mix that is in your face. Plus, it's totally free as my way of saying thanks for listening. Then go to mixmasterbundle.com to get started for free now and look for the clickable link in the show notes below. All right, so here's a question from John Cale again. I'm going to narrow it down to one of his questions because he's got a bunch in here. Any tips about layering doubles of guitars? I feel like when I listen to your reel, there isn't that much of that. It's like it's more about being selective. Just have one great guitar sound on the left or right, and don't layer the shit out of it. But maybe you do have some tips on layering.
Well, it depends. It depends on the band. Like on the Clutch record, there's only one guitar player. So the first thing we did was cut the track, and then immediately I had Tim cut a double so we could have a left-right. You know what I mean? Like that wiggle, the left-right wiggle.
And would it be the same thing on the right as on the left as far as mic?
Sometimes we'd change it. Sometimes we'd change it later. We'd change the amp. We'd just do a different amp. But it depends on the band. Like two guitar bands, I'm not really doubling parts because there's no need.
But
it's
now,
two guitars.
If we are doubling, though, is it smarter to change the amp than to change the guitar?
Well, if they're, either one, it just depends.
If you change the guitar, do you run more of a risk of intonation issues between the two parts and that sort of thing?
I never worry about that shit.
Okay, great. Leave that up to the guitar player.
I just don't ever worry about it. I mean, if it sounds out of tune, it's out of tune.
Right.
But that might be cool.
Right.
You know what I mean? I mean, I mixed this track I mixed yesterday. On one of the songs, the guitar was definitely a little out of tune. But it was a live take. It's a live take, live vocals, live drums, live guitar. One of the guitar players had a string out of tune. Was it out of tune in the track? No. But if I soloed it, I could hear one of them's a little out of tune. Now, did I fix it? Fuck no. No. I just put some reverb on it, No, you just don't worry about that stuff.
Well, I'm glad you mentioned that because that was another question I had for you was adding effects to the guitars that are panned left and right. How often are the guitars dry? What's coming out of the amp? How often are we adding stuff to it?
It just depends. I like to tell the guitar player, whatever sound you want, let's record that. Right?
Yeah.
So if this track's going to be dry, I think this needs to be dry and tight. Okay, cool. It's dry and tight. Well, I think this would be cool with some echo or some reverb or some chorus or whatever. Okay, cool. Let's do that. Let's print it. Let's commit.
Yeah.
Let's believe in ourselves.
I forgot which track it was. It was one of the ones with Jack where there's this, the guitars are left and right and it's in the little tag before the singing and the verse happens. And they're super verbed out and it sounds like you're riding up the verb with each phrase. And then when the singing happens, all of a sudden they're just dry and the verb thing goes away. I thought that was really clever. And I guess, maybe these are tricks that sometimes happen.
You know what that is? What that is that's Jack playing through his pedal board, right?
Mm-hmm.
He's got a reverb, he's got a reverb on his pedal board and he's playing. And then we punched in the guitar over the top of that. So, big reverb cutoff. We erased it.
Okay.
When it goes to the verse. You know what I mean?
So you turn off the verb and now you punch it for
We
the
didn't
verse.
turn it off. We just punched over it
Okay.
because we're on tape.
So it was on
You know
two
what I mean?
tracks. The verb was on its own track?
No, the verb was on his guitar.
Right.
And he's playing through so much, like distortion and compression and shit, that's why it sounds like it swells.
Right.
Excuse
Right.
me.
It's a cool sound.
Yeah, we do that. We did that quite a bit. There's a track called Cuts Like a Buffalo.
Yeah.
All of those vocals were done live. Well, he had these gobos, and we had a gobo over the bass amp, right? And so we were going to do vocals on that song. I set up a space echo and a whammy and something else on the vocal mic, right? And then as he sang it, he just twisted the knobs as he was singing. And there's a couple spots where he's like, hey, I want to erase the reverb right here. I go, okay, cool. So then I just rewound the tape, put the track in record with the mic muted, and we just punched in and back out. And so you'll hear this big reverb and then it'll cut off and go dry.
That's great.
And it's just like, that's just me erasing the reverb on the track.
We should do that. We should do that more in Pro Tools,
Yeah, well, you can. It's easy. In the old 800 had this thing called spot erase, and you would get it lined up, and then you get another person to hit the spot erase button to hit record while you then rolled the tape by erasing, and then they'd punch you out, and then it would erase. It just erased that track.
Wow.
Yeah.
I like stuff like that. All right, so here's a question from Cody Angel on the delay throw trick where you copy a section you want to echo. I think that was maybe one where you were talking about take a copy of a word and put it on the track below and send that to the echo. How do you get that in stereo? Do you have to copy that to the left and right, or will some stereo plugins take the mono in?
Yeah, I would just use like a stereo, like a dual mono plugin. I'd use a dual mono and then unlink them and just set different times or whatever.
Right.
So it's in stereo.
Okay, cool. And then that was one of my questions to you was just that, you have such a clever use of runaway delays and things like that. Do you want to talk a little bit more about just cool ways to do that? Is a lot of that just being playful in in kind of a post-production moment and then just
it depends.
Keep your favorite bits?
It completely depends. I, as a producer, engineer, will print everything I want on the record in the record, except for like maybe vocal effects. But whatever's on there, I pretty much print it. Like it's pretty much baked in. And all my faders are at 0. All my faders on my desk are at 0. You can just put the faders up, hit play, and it's going to be the rough mix. But because I work on a console, I keep all kinds of things patched. I've got Paramoog echoes. I've got my tape echoes. I've got the Strymon Benson echo. I have a real Benson echo rec. I've got, let's see.
You got a wall of stuff to your left.
I got a wall of shit. Yeah, I've got a pair of PCM 42s. I've got 949. I've got a 910. I've got all this stuff. I've got a DM100. I got all this stuff that I can use, and it's all patched. So if I get, like I'll throw an echo into a reverb, and then I'll take that reverb and send that reverb to like a long repeating echo, so that like the reverb is echoing. There's an echo into a reverb that then is echoing or something, nice. I'll just try all that stuff on the fly, and I'll feed some of it back into itself from time to time, so I'll take maybe this tape echoes are going to my PCM 70, which is like a relatively short sort of plate reverb. But then the plate reverb then goes to a pair of PCM 42s. And then those are going back to the tape echo. So, you just kind of build these things and kind of get these sort of sounds. And once you kind of get it,
record it.
Well, yeah, or not, or just make my assistant document it.
Well, and it's a funny thing. I feel like it's instinctively you record it onto a track and you capture it when it's the real gear like that. But somehow it seems like we kind of forgot that a little bit when we switched
Well, the
to
other
plugins.
thing is that the other thing is if you just record it, there's no joy in manipulating any of it in the mix. Like
Right.
once you mix it, that's it.
And so you like to leave some of that for the mix?
Absolutely.
Keep it fun?
Yeah.
Talk more about that. What does that mean?
Well, most of the time, like this kind of vibe is like when people ask me to mix stuff. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
So that's sort of creative things that happen in the mix process. But like when I'm the producer and I'm recording the track also, vocals, I will add distortion to the vocal, but again, I'll record a clean, dry track. And then I'll record the distortion as the other side of a stereo track. And I just pan those together. And then I can, adjust the distortion with a trim plugin, right?
Right.
Up and down. And then I'll sort of figure out through the rough mix process, effects-wise, what I liked. Because one of the things I do all the time, every time I'm tracking, I'm always recording a rough mix. Always. So before we end, like we're working on this song. We're like, okay, cool. Let me get these comp vocals. Great. We got the comp vocals. Great. What do you want to do next? Well, let's track another song. Okay, great. Let me run the rough. Boom. I run a rough.
Right.
And I run a rough, full quality 96K, full quality rough. Why? Because rough mixes end up being mixes.
Yeah. And just a reminder, everybody, you're on a console. You need to print that. Whatever you're hearing on the console needs to get printed for there to be a rough mix.
Well, you should do that anyway.
Yeah.
Because you never know what you're going to change the next day you open the session.
Yeah, and I'll change it.
So I've got rough mix tracks and I date them, rough mix, and then I put in the date. Rough mix, the name of the song, rough mix, and the date. Name of the song, rough mix, the date. Name of the song, rough mix, the date.
And do you give the session the same name as the rough mix so that you can go back to it?
It's funny, is the session always? No, I don't. Because I have it set to save 1,000 backup sessions.
Right.
So I'll just keep the name of the session the same until we get to mix. And then once we get to mix, I create I save as a mix.
Yeah.
So that there's a sort of unfucked with version of the mix of the track that I can, start over with if I really screw something up.
All right, so here's a question from Jamie Warren. When you record a band playing live in a room where, Vance, you line up the guitar and bass cabinets in relation to the drums, it's a question I think it was
used to do that. That's a Glenn Johns thing.
Yeah,
that's where you line all the amps up. Yeah,
so,
that works.
So
great.
He said he thinks that you do them all in a line facing in the same direction. How do you keep the bass amp from being picked up more from the closer side of the drum mics than on the farther side?
Yeah, it's kind of one of those deals. Often I'll take the bass mic amp, I'll put it in another room. Okay. I'll just do guitar amps in there. Because what happens is the bass amp makes all the fucking snares rattle.
Right. Which can be cool sometimes, but it's not
sometimes
cool
it's cool. It's not always cool.
Yeah. All right. So then here's a question from Jonathan Day. Vance, give us the really quick version of what that was again, just in case somebody's new to this idea. What does it mean to line up this?
So one of the things I read, Glenn Johns has this book, and it's a pretty good book. It's a book that doesn't have a lot of tricks in it or anything. It's just a lot about him doing sessions, and there's
flying to other countries.
Yeah, I mean, it's a good book, and I bought it. It's good. I wish there was dirt. I wish he was like, yeah, the fucking Rolling Stones were assholes and blah, blah, blah. And, but it's none of that. Maybe he'll write that one and release it, when he, whatever. But it's great because there are a few little things he throws out. One of them is when he's recording the Stones, he would set the drums up in the room where the drums sounded good. And then he would just gobo the amps off so that the amps were in the same line as the kick drum. So all the amplifiers and the kick drum were all in the same line. And it's crazy because when you do that, there's not a lot of guitar that ever makes it into the drums and vice versa. It really works. I did this band, Diarrhea Planet. It's a Nashville band. They're fucking awesome. Yeah. And they had 4 half stacks right, in my tracking room with the drums. And we cut the whole record without headphones. And it worked.
That's great.
4 half stacks. 4 guys
I
playing
can't wait
guitar.
I haven't tried it yet here, but I can't wait to try it out.
It's hard to do if you don't have a big enough room.
Yeah.
But I gotta tell you, man, if you're in a room that's 20 feet wide or 25 feet wide, it's awesome.
That's cool.
It works, and it works. And it's strange how little guitar is in the drums.
And just to picture it, rock stars, when he's talking about lining them up, just think about like the band on a stage,
just like exactly like on stage.
Yeah. Yeah. It's just probably why they tried it that way in the first place. Okay. So here's a question from Jonathan Day. I've been recording at home for many years, but my raw tracks seem to always have a sort of dullness to them. If I try to use a brighter mic or add a tiny bit of high EQ on the way in, they sound thin or brittle. The opposite seems to be true as well when it comes to low end. I've received downloaded tracks from professionals which do not seem to suffer from this. How does one remove the obvious, quote, recorded at home sound? Would love to see or hear a master like Vance record a band with stuff you could get at Music Go Round. I don't know what that is.
He's just basically gear that I think he's saying like Guitar Center.
Right,
you know what I mean?
Right, okay.
Well, the first thing I'd say is I think you have bad monitoring. First of all, I would say that you have something in your room that's not allowing you to hear what you really think you're hearing. And so that would be the first thing I would say. And then after that, because I can't be there, I can't hear what you're hearing. I can't tell you what it is. My friend Nico Bolas has made a couple records with just 57s. He made a Mavericks record a couple years ago, completely the whole record on SM57s. Now, that's partially how good the band is.
Yeah.
That's talented people. But, you don't have to have the best mics in the world. They help. But having really good monitoring and knowing what you're hearing, that's a big deal. I'm getting ready to try something wacky here. I've been in this room now for 6 years, and I, I'm not an acoustician, I'm not a genius, but it sounds really good. And Lidge has been over here. You've heard it.
Yeah.
But there are a couple things that are maybe not quite so great. And I'm going to try out this Trinov system in my room here the next week or so, because I definitely know there's a couple of frequencies that the only way I can change it would be by spending a bunch of money, moving my console, which is not really, I could do it, but it's a pain. If I move my console, I can't get behind it ever again if I move it to where it needs to be. So I need a little bit of correction. And so I'm going to try it out. It's expensive. It's not for everybody. Mm-hmm. But the thing is, if you have a set of speakers and you know what they sound like, try them in your room. And if you feel like you're missing something, turn your room sideways. Try them going the other direction. Put them on the stands and set them sideways.
Yeah, and importantly, for the rock stars, just do that early. Do that early, right? Maybe do it before you get everything hooked up in your studio. Just listen in there in different ways first, right?
Yeah, absolutely. You definitely need to kind of like try out different things, before you go spend a bunch of money. I've been here 6 years, and I'm just now like, hey, I got to spend some money to fix some things. So.
Well, and it reminds me of a point. I have been to your studio, and if you played me something in your speakers, my first thought would be, man, that sounds killer, And also, rockstars, if you ever get the chance to make it to one of Vance's parties, you're going to want to hang out with your beer very carefully next to that wall of cool ass gear, because that's a great place to be. But it's through that experience of mixing in there that you've become familiar with where, certain frequencies or whatever it is, where you need to, step over here to hear that frequency, like we all do in our home studios, I guess, on some
Yeah.
level. On some level.
Yeah. Yeah,
And
absolutely.
the Trinnov sound system sounds great. I got to hear that at AAS last year, and it was very cool.
Yeah, I'm not a big fan of putting digital things in my analog, but I definitely need a little bit of correction. So
Yeah.
I'm looking forward to trying it out at least.
Do you feel like the time you've spent watching YouTube videos, trying out mix tricks, and tweaking version after version of your mixes has gotten you nowhere? Have you been looking for a simple, straightforward, step-by-step process for creating a pro mix that won't take years to learn? What if you could have a Grammy-winning mix engineer who understood all your mixing struggles and could coach you through them? If you struggle with any of these questions, then the Ultimate Mixing Masterclass is just for you. Now you can discover a proven step-by-step mix system from Grammy-winning mixer Craig Alvin for consistently creating a pro-quality mix from your home studio that will sound amazing everywhere. When you're ready to take your mixes to Grammy-winning quality, then get started at ultimatemixingmasterclass.com. So here's a closing question, and we can wrap it up. Donnie Hill asks you to give a little bit more of the history of Sputnik Sound and your relationship with Mitch. He wants to know if you're doing work at Blackbird, which I think you are. And
From time to time.
And if you have anything you want to say about your latest work with Chris Stapleton and wife.
Oh, and Morgan. Okay, so Mitch and I have known each other for a long time, about 98. It all came about, I was working for the band Jars of Clay, and he was friends with theirs. And sometime in 99 or so, Mitch had a studio at his house. Steve Mason, the guitar player from Jars of Clay, was building a studio in his house. Steve didn't have any gear. Mitch was getting kicked out of his laundry room studio where he was at. And so Mitch took his gear and put it in over there. They started recording. Then we started making a record, and this goes on, and then he gets kicked out, and him and Jakir put in over at House of Blues. In about 2005, 2006, I was working at Blackbird, but for reasons I won't get into, I was not really able to work there. It's kind of a weird deal. And so I needed a place to work, and Jakir had left. And so I went over and I said, "Hey, can I put my gear in here and start working in here?" And he was like, "Yeah, man, great. Love to have you." So we've been together ever since. I've mixed a bunch of records for Mitch. I've mastered a bunch of records for Mitch lately, which is kind of cool. Although I'm a terrible mastering engineer, but I'm mastering records for Mitch because I'm cheap. That's the deal. I'm cheap. No, we can just do it in house, and it's not real mastering. It's just sort of like,
yeah, but fake mastering's fun anyway. It's fun to get into mastering.
Yeah. I mean, I send everything to Pete Lyman because I don't trust myself.
Nice.
But this is not a record that I'm mixing, so I definitely, I can go, yeah, it needs more of this or less of this or whatever, blah blah blah, and then he can take it and go, wow, that sounds good, or that sounds like shit. He can hire a real mastering guy. But so far that hasn't happened. So yeah, we've been here 6 years, and I don't plan on going anywhere.
Beautiful studio.
Thank you. It keeps getting better. I was a Blackbird from 2002 to 2010, about eight and a half years, something like that.
Was my session the straw that broke the camel's back?
No, your session was pretty early on, to be honest with you. But yours was probably in 2003, I'd say, something like that. 2003.
Yeah.
And it was early on. No, it wasn't that. It was just, there's just I had a lot of opportunity to make records, and I had no opportunity to make them at Blackbird because my job was to make sure the studio was running. And if I wasn't making sure the studio was running, management didn't feel like that I should be making records there, which is really kind of crazy. So it's a thing that, let me put it this way. John and I are great friends. We've been great friends forever. We've worked it out. There's no animosity on either side. Blackbird is one of the best studios in the entire world, if not the best. I haven't been there in 11 years, so it's been a long time.
Well,
it's not like when I left, it fell apart. So
you're one of the founders. I mean, you're one of the reasons.
Yeah, I was there from the beginning.
Yeah.
I actually have a session over there Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, doing a 5/1 mix. I've already mixed it. I'm literally, as we're speaking, I'm recording stems for that mix this entire time. It's a 2-hour and 45-minute video live performance, and I'm recording a drum reverb stem right now in real time.
That's good.
But so I work over there all the time. I don't want to make records over there. I want to make records here. I love the room. I love recording over there. I love D. I love recording over there. I love the gear. I love the microphones. I love all that. But this is my home. This is my territory. Everything is where I want it all. Because it's mine. And so that's kind of the deal.
Well, and you and Mitch have built such a wonderful place. It's like super cozy in there,
Well, thanks.
So anything else you want to add about recent stuff with Chris Stapleton?
Someone's talking about Chris. Yeah, no, we did a new record with Chris in January and February of last year. We ended the last week of February, like right the last day. And then it's funny, we one of the last things we did, there's a song called Cold. We did strings on it. And then I mixed it. We did strings during the day and I mixed it that night. And then we were pretty much done with the record. And we just kind of left it because we knew it wasn't going to come out until for a while. So we left it for mastering. We didn't really do anything with it. And then I came over to here at Sputnik and I recorded strings for the Fish record. And it was the same players, which was really cool. It's like, hey, I just saw you yesterday. And we recorded strings for the Fish record here. And then I started the old 97s record. Tornado happened. And then, then this pandemic started. And everything changed. I started mixing. The Chris's record sat for a while. Then we went through mastering. We futzed around with the order, and then finally landed on a final order and a master. And then, it came out. I think it's a beautiful fucking record. I think the song Starting Over is probably one of the coolest things that I've ever recorded. There's a song called Cold on there that's really beautiful. The strings are beautiful. Benmont Tench playing keyboards on it. It's fucking unbelievable. It's a cool record, man. I really think it's probably, to me, it's sonically better than Traveler, and some of the songs resonate a little deeper with me than even with Traveler. It's not a very loud record. We didn't blast the mastering, to be honest with you. It's probably as loud. It's not much louder than what I mixed. And I love that Chris didn't want it like blasting.
Nice.
So if you're just on your iTunes and you play your Jason Aldean song and then it goes to Chris Stapleton, it's going to be quiet. And I love the fact that Chris is like, I want it to sound like this. I don't care to compete.
Yeah.
And this is something, Jack White did the same thing. It's the vinyl is beautiful. The vinyl sounds fucking awesome.
Well, ultimately your music stands on its own merit. It's not, in the long run, music isn't compared on playlists.
But it is. Trust me.
Okay. All right. Maybe I have to.
Well, it is. I can tell you, I can't tell you, but I'm on the NARAS craft committee most years here in Nashville. And I can tell you that, we set the volume at one level and we listen to all these records and, if it's 6 dB quieter, people will change it. But most engineers will be like, just turn that up a little bit. Let me hear that, just turn it up a little bit. Oh, that's a little quieter. Cool. A&R people, they hate it, I think.
Well, I'm just
But, you know,
thinking,
the great
like,
thing is,
when music comes out, it's in a playlist against something else current, but 10 years later, 20 years later, a great record is just listened to on its own, is the way I'm thinking of it, although it's still in a playlist if it's against other
you
from
know,
the
the,
same
the
genre.
funny thing is there was an article just a couple days back talking about the album being this dead format. And the guy was like, yeah, nobody listens to albums because we're no longer trapped by music. In other words, like, we're no longer trapped to the medium, which basically meant we put a cassette in, right?
Mhm.
Or a vinyl on, and we just, you know, listened to the vinyl. You know what I mean?
Yep.
And so um uh now we have all this streaming, we can listen to whatever we want. So maybe the album is a dead format. And I got to be honest with you, I agree, but I don't agree. I love putting a record on and just listening to the record.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Now, how often do I do it? I don't do it very often because all I do every day is listen to music. So sometimes I like to just listen to mindless music. Like, I just put a playlist on and it's on, and, you know, oh, there's that Cramp song. I fucking love that Cramp song, you know? And then that takes me back to a place when I first heard that record, and, you know, or Duran Duran, or, you know, or something current. I don't know, you know?
I know you're
But
you're home listening to Hungry Like the Wolf most days.
man, I love fucking Hungry. I love that record. Come on, man. That was 1982. I was a senior in high school. Well, actually, that record came out, I was in college at that point.
All
Came
right,
out.
I'm going to sneak in one more question. You mentioned the old 97s, and
Yeah.
you know, and I did say we are going to hit some mixing things. So here's one. Maybe it's mixing, maybe it's not. But immediately, what I noticed about the old 97s record was this incredible treatment of the acoustic guitars. It was like I don't know how to explain it. It's like they're sort of powerful rhythm acoustic guitars, but they're so soft on the ear, and they sort of like morph in with the drum sound, and they're not overpowering everything. Does this make any sense? Can you kind of picture
Yeah,
the
I
acoustics on
can.
that?
So,
What helps with that?
depending on which record you're talking about,
Good with God,
the
I think, or
oh, Good
Graveyard
with God.
Whistling.
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, yeah. Okay, so that was a, you know, $25,000 Martin D18.
Okay. All right.
You know,
Of course it was.
as Rhett calls it, a God guitar. You know,
Yeah.
on the new record, we used a very nice, I think, a D28 of Jason Isbell's. But part of what's going on there is Rhett. Rhett kind of plays like that. Like, he's this really great rhythm guitar player, acoustic rhythm player, you know?
Mhm.
And on Graveyard Whistling, one of the things, every one of those songs on Graveyard Whistling, the vocal and the acoustic guitar are live.
Ah.
So they're live takes. So what we did, I know this is going to sound kooky, but I have this microphone set up where I use these like three mics, like a 67, a 582, and then his vocal mic, which was a 47 on this one,
Mhm.
right? And I had this little weird triangle thing and all this. We would cut the track, get the track, but then I would need him to give me a couple vocal takes for comping. You know what I mean? And I would comp the vocal take with the guitar.
Right.
Then, because of publishing and all of that, and sync licensing, we needed a clean guitar without the vocal, right?
Mhm.
So I would have him play it a couple times down. We'd make sure there's no errors or whatever. And then what ended up happening was we used the live vocal and guitar. And then I kind of used one of the other guitars, which really wasn't supposed to be used on the record, just the instrumental for like sync licensing. I ended up using that as kind of a double. And so it's a stereo acoustic guitar
Yep.
times two.
Okay.
It's two takes, but one is a little to one side, one's a little to the other side. One has a little bit of the vocal in it, but you can't really tell. And that was it.
Well, it's cool. It's just like it was my thought was it's a kind of guitar that doesn't have too much boomy bass in it and stuff like that. It was just it's very soft
it's
on the
mic'd
ear.
it's mic'd about a foot back. Two mics, but about a foot back. One, the 67 on the low side, pointing at the hole, back by his hand. So literally, like the microphone is behind his hand, and his hand is moving through the microphone pattern. Do you understand what I'm saying by this?
Mm-hmm.
So that microphone, I mean, maybe that's part of it too. And then the high mic, the 582, is pointing right where the neck and body meet. And they're at a 45 to each other. And they're exactly in an equilateral triangle from the vocal.
Okay.
They're all exactly about a foot and a half apart.
Cool. All right. That sounds like fun.
Triangle, this weird triangle thing. And then he's singing back about, and I do the same thing for Stapleton. Exactly the same thing.
Very cool.
So,
well,
yeah.
I got to say, last time you were on the show, you talked about how you mic'd up Chris's a guitar amp, and it was very cool. Four mics on either side of the cone. And I immediately went and did that because I had all those mics, and I recreated it for my own guitar on my own record, which was actually a couple of years ago. Gosh. So I'm a little slow on releasing my record and finishing, but I'm about to. So thank you for doing that.
Did it work?
It sounded awesome.
Yeah.
It sounded so awesome. And then I panned the two mics to one side and the two mics to the other side. And if I remember correctly, I think it was the U67 and the BK5 or 57 on one side, and then the
BK5 and the Royer on the other.
Yeah, I didn't have a Royer, but I have a Bang & Olufsen with the Royer ribbon in it, so I use those. But then I ran those through a stereo compressor, and then I also bust those all in mono through the 1176 and ran that up the middle, and that all just added up beautifully.
Yeah. But it sounded great.
Yeah. So, all right. So I'm ready for the closing question here, Vance. This one's hypothetical. You've answered it many times, and you'll answer it many times again. But this time it's going to come from Brian Tyso. And Brian wants to know, what's the single most important thing that you need to know to be a rock star of the studio yourself one day?
Perseverance. It's a hard business. It's a hard business to be in and be successful at.
Made easier by 2020.
Yeah, made so much easier by 2020, and a pandemic, global pandemic, mind you. Perseverance and sheer will, like the force of will, sort of. Do you know what I mean? This business is hard on relationships. It's hard on your home life. It's hard on family life. Mm-hmm. It's hard on friends. It's hard on hobbies. It's hard to have a hobby. It's hard on all that. And the only way to really be successful is to make a lot of hard choices. We're in a business that doesn't really run 9 to 5. And so if your significant other works 9 to 5, that doesn't make sense to them. Mm-hmm. Why you're going to work at 3 in the afternoon, and sleeping in till noon. You know what I mean?
Yep.
And why you had to spend $2,000 on a compressor or a microphone instead of, fixing the siding on the shed. It's just these things from my life. But I mean, it's one of those things. If you are making a living at it, then this is your business and this is what you do. It's still a lot of hard things. I want to say this. I have tremendous respect for Dave Pensato, right? Mm. I have tremendous respect for his mixing. I have tremendous respect for what he's done. I don't always agree with him, and I definitely don't always agree with her. I just don't always agree. All right, but Dave Pinsato said something once that was fucking brilliant, and he said, if you want to be successful in this business, you can't have a lot of responsibilities. Mm. And he's basically saying, look, if you have a dog, you better be able to bring your dog to the studio. Yeah. Because you're gonna neglect your dog. If you have a girlfriend, you better figure that out, because she better really love you. If you're married, your wife better love her job as much as you love yours. Yeah. Because I can tell you right now that if you love your job and your spouse doesn't, that's just a bubbling cauldron of anger. Right. Because, they're doing something just to pay bills, and you're, doing your life dream. I know that from experience. If you have kids, you're going to neglect your kids. If you have parents still, you're going to neglect seeing them because you got sessions on the weekend. Yep. It's just a hard fucking life to do it. It's so rewarding when it works out. Yeah. I'm 56 years old, right? I was an overnight success in this business at 45. Yeah. That's a fucking reality. Well, 43, 42. I mean, my first real big record I got, I was 41, 42 years old. I had already been on the road for 20 some years at that point. This is not, next year I'll have been doing this for 40 fucking years. 40 years, man. That's a long damn time. So, perseverance. And last year and the year before, probably the first year in my life, I can actually say, that I could take my foot off the gas a little. This year, strangely, was the first year I actually did it. In other words, not freaking out because I wasn't booked every single day. Right. And part of it, there's reasons, there's financial reasons for part of it, but the other part of it was like suddenly, you start losing, you lose a couple friends from this fucking pandemic, and, it comes home to you. Right. I'm 56 years old. It's going to kill me before it kills a 26-year-old. Most likely, that's just how it is. And so, this year has been, it's been a really great year, but at the same time, it's not been easy. So perseverance. Yeah. Well, I think you did something wise this year too, which is, I think I remember hearing that you finished your pool. Oh, well, I didn't finish it. No, last year we remodeled our kitchen, which was we remodeled our entire upstairs actually of our house. Yeah. And I put a new fence behind the pool. And then this year we landscaped it. That was the deal. So we spent a lot of time outside. I did outdoor lighting. We put up palm trees, which I don't know are going to live through the winter. But that was a $250 expense that we just tried out. Nice. It fucking looks awesome, but it may not live. So we'll see about that. That's great. But yeah, so we made our backyard. Now the bad part is nobody could come over and enjoy it but us. Well, I got to see it on Facebook anyway. You said, yeah, exactly. So, perseverance, and, perseverance. Let me ask you one other element to that question, which I think you may have answered it already, but for those who hear that and they think, okay, so maybe, when I'm young and single, it's a good time for me to pour everything I got into this, making records and being in the studio. In your experience, have you seen more long-term happy producers and engineers who have persevered, who found a way to, continue to have a relationship and a family and things like that, than ones that
maybe persevere single and solo all the way through? Is that a fair question to ask?
It is. Let me ask you a question, Lidge. How many people that you know that are in this business that are divorced? Anybody you know personally?
Me personally.
Okay, that was my point.
Yeah.
No, man. I mean, I don't think any of us. I mean, Al Schmidt. You know, I mean, I know his wife. I don't know how long they've been married, but I don't know. I mean, I don't know the question. I don't know the answer. I think the thing is that when you're young, that's the time to bang hard on this business and learn everything you can.
Yeah.
You know, when you can go see bands every night. But I mean, hopefully at some point you'll be able to do this. When you can, say, hey man, come over to my house. I've got it set up. I've got this Apollo and I can record your band, and like we can just do it in my bedroom. And I got drums set up in the living room. And, there's a hallway with the stairs. We put a mic at the top and sounds like Led Zeppelin. And we're going to work all hours. And, that's the time to do all that and learn all that and figure all that shit out.
You can't use the bathroom. That's our reverb chamber.
Yeah, exactly. Your wife's not going to be down with that at all, period. So, and if she is, you are a fucking lucky man. Like if you got that, man, just hang on, buddy. You're in for good. And like I said, happy. Well, there's the truth is happy life, happy wife, happy life. Or happy girlfriend, happy life. Whatever. That's real. That is actually real. So, there's a lot of people. I know a lot of people in this business. A lot of them have been divorced. A lot of them have been married multiple times. It's not for everybody. So,
well, right on, man.
It's just, it's a tough one.
Well, a great takeaway though, perseverance. Vance, thank you so much for being on Recording Studio Rockstars with us.
Yeah, man, I love it. I'm happy to be here. My annual January show.
That's right.
Number, whatever number this is.
We'll keep it up, man. We'll keep it up.
Yeah, absolutely.
Well, we're pretty close to 300 at this point. So.
Cool. Awesome.
We might be almost there. Let the rock stars know where should they go check out your work and find you. And of course, a reminder, I put your playlist in the show notes.
That playlist is pretty good. That playlist is managed by my management company, by GPS. My Wikipedia page has got a pretty good running, discography. And it's pretty correct. VancePowell.com has my phone number and email.
Okay.
The Sputnik Sound website is really weird because I never updated my side of it ever. And it's not up to date.
But doesn't it look really cool as I remember?
It looks cool.
Yeah.
It just isn't correct in any way, shape, or form. Mitch's side looks great. Mine, awesome. I just never did it. So
awesome.
So well, I should hire somebody.
Thank you so much for hanging with us. Look forward to seeing you soon in person.
Yeah, man.
And,
absolutely.
I'll be at your next party, dude.
That'll be good.
And I'll invite you to mine.
That'd be great.
I can't wait to have a celebration for winning the home studio battle. I'm inviting everybody.
Fucking A, man. Let's do it.
Dude. Rock and roll, man. Thanks so much.
Right.
Cheers.
See you, Lidge. Bye.
Thanks so much for listening to Recording Studio Rockstars. If you enjoyed the show and want to help make it better, then please share this episode with your friends on social media and leave a rating and review on iTunes to help the podcast reach more rock stars like yourself. You can click directly over to iTunes or go to rsrockstars.com/review for an easy explanation. And remember to hit the subscribe button to keep up with weekly episodes. And if you're ready to make your best record ever now, then head over to Recording Studio Rockstars Academy, where you can start with my free course at mixmasterbundle.com. And if you want more free content from Recording Studio Rockstars, all you have to do is go to rsrockstars.com/email. Again, that's rsrockstars.com/email to enter your name and email, and I'll keep you in the loop with articles, videos, podcast updates, and even free gear giveaways for your studio. Just look for the link in the show notes below. Thanks so much for listening, and thanks for being a rock star. I'm Lidge Shaw, and this is Recording Studio Rockstars. Now, go make great music. Recording Studio Rockstars would like to give a big thank you to our amazing sponsors who help make this episode possible. Sound Porter Mastering, OWC, Atom Audio, API Audio, Spectra 1964, Isotope, and Jay-Z Microphones. Remember to get your free mastering demo at soundporter.com and use the coupon code ROCK10 at Isotope for 10% off any plugin purchase, or start your 7-day free subscription trial to get access to lots of their plugins. And use the coupon code ROCKSTARS at jzmic.com for 20% off this very pop filter you're hearing right now for a limited time. You will find links to all these wonderful sponsors in our show notes. These are all things I highly recommend for your studio. They're going to help you make your best record ever. I would also like to thank our fantastic team here at Recording Studio Rockstars: Vlad Weselchenko, Braden Stremming, Hugh McDonald, and John Richardson for additional podcast and video production. You guys rock. Thanks so much for listening, and we'll see you in the next episode. Cheers.